We begin today the Gemara on Daf Samach Zayin, 5 lines down from the top of the Yamud. The Gemara brings what it said in the Mishnah, Zeh klal kolsha banosai noisen tamcholo. The Mishnah is speaking about the case where yayin nesach spilled onto grapes or onto figs or dates. So the Mishnah says the rule is, if the yayin nesach gives a good taste, a tam l'shvach, then it's going to be yoser. But if it gives a bad taste, the example of the Mishnah was if you add vinegar from yayin nesach that falls onto split beans, that gives a bad taste, then it's going to be mutter. Amar Rav Yudah Mashmuel, hachi hilchaseh. We paskin like what it says in the Mishnah. But now, Amar Rav Yudah Mashmuel, another thing Rav Yudah said in the name of Shmuel to clarify the pshat in the Mishnah, that loishanu el shanafa al toich grisen reischen. When do we say that vinegar gives a bad taste to the beans if it fell into these beans when they were hot, boiling hot? Aval nachal toich grisen seinen, if they fall into the beans when they're cold. And then later he boiled them, it became hot. So now when it was cold, it has a good flavor from the chaymetz, from the vinegar. When you heated it up, now it becomes a bad flavor. So nasa kemi sheish biach or lebesayif pagam or lebesayif pagim. So this is a case where in the beginning it got a good taste, and then only later, because you heated it up, now the taste is bad. But because originally it's a good taste, so then the yayin nesach is going to aser it. The fact that later on it's a bad taste doesn't change the issa that there was in the beginning. So therefore, in this case, it's going to be aser. The actual lashon of the Gemara here is nasa kemi. Taisus of here asks, why does the Gemara use this term of nasa kemi? It seems like when it's hot, it gives a bad taste. When it's cold, it gives a good taste. That's it. What's the nasa kemi? So Taisus says because it only gives a good taste if you first heated it up, and then it became cold, then afterwards, when it's cold, it will give a good taste. So over here, that's not exactly what happened. So therefore, the Gemara uses this expression of nasa kemi. Now, the Gemara brings other Amiram said the same thing. V'chein ki yaseh ravin, Amar Rabba bar Bachana, Amar Rab Yechanan, that l'shana wal l'shanaf l'otech grisen reischen. The halacha of the Mishnah is when it fell into the beans that are hot, then it gives a bad taste. Aval naval l'otech grisen seinen. If it fell into cold beans, v'erticham, and then heated it up, so nasa kemi sheish biach or lebesayif pagam. So here it's a case where it's like it first gave a good taste, and then only afterwards, because you heated it up, now it's a bad taste, so aser, it remains aser. V'chein ki aser avdimi v'chulu. And when Avdimi came, he said the exact same halacha. And v'kacho ya'osim ba'arvei shabbases b'tzipairi. This is what they would do on Erev Shabbos in Tzipairi, preparing food for Shabbos. They would add chaymetz, vinegar, to the beans that were cold beans, and then it gives a good taste, and it was such a good taste. It's shachalayim. They referred to it as shachalayim, which is really something else. Shachalayim is a kind of herb, I think it's called cress, that then they would also make it with this vinegar. So over here they would refer to this, the beans with this vinegar, as shachalayim. Amar Reish Lakish said, Noisin tam levgam she'omru, when it says this halacha, that's something which is aser. We're speaking about yayin nesach, or in any case where iser gets mixed into something, to food which is mutter, and it gives a bad flavor. So she'amru, this was said that it's mutter. Loi she'yamru. It's not in a case where you're going to say that kidei rezu chazer melach. You know why it has a bad taste? It's not caused only by the bad flavor that the iser has. It's because the food itself is not seasoned well. It's missing salt, chaseira melach, or yiseira melach, it's too salty, or chaseira tavlin, it's missing spices, or yiseira tavlin, it's over-spiced. So over here, the fact that the forbidden foods is giving a bad taste, it's not that it itself is giving a bad taste. It's because there's other things that are also contributing or causing the bad taste. So in such a case, that's not called Noisin Tam Levgam. Elokol she'ein chaseira klum, only in a case where this food itself is not missing anything, it's a perfectly good seasoned food. And ve'ein acheles mipnei zeh. And the thing that's causing the bad flavor now is only this. It's only the food, the iser food that fell in. Right, so that's what's called Noisin Tam Levgam. And Rashi just points out the lashon of the Gemara is very strong. The einon acheles, that it sounds like noisin tam levgam would only be mutter in a case where you mamish can't eat it because of this. But that's not what the Gemara means. It means that whatever bad taste it causes is only being caused by this and not by anything else. V'kedamri, but there's another version that what Rish Lakish said is actually the opposite. Rish Lakish said, Neisen tam lev gam sha'amru, this halacha of Neisen tam lev gam that was said that if it gives a bad flavor, that there's no iser. So we're not going to say regarding this, that kedei rezu chasei melach, that you know why it's giving a bad flavor? Because it's missing salt, or you say to melach, it is too much salt, or chaseret tavlin, it's missing spices, or you say it tavlin, or it's too much spices, and therefore the bad taste is not being caused by this itself. It's being caused by other things as well. We're not going to say that. Ella, rather what we say is, hashta mia ha pagma, according to the condition of the food that it's in now. So this food is missing salt or has too much salt. In the condition of the food that it is now, it comes out that this iser is giving a bad flavor, and therefore it is going to be mutter. Right, so the point that Rish Lakish is saying, according to this opinion, according to this Ikad Amri, is basically the exact opposite thing. That Rish Lakish is saying that you don't say you have to look at the food how it would be in its perfect condition. And then you have to assess to see whether this iser will give a bad flavor or not. You have to look at the food in its condition the way it is actually now. Whatever it is. If it's missing salt or too much salt, if in the condition of the food that it is now, this iser is giving a bad flavor, then it's going to be mutter. So this, according to this version, Rish Lakish is actually coming to say a kula, a leniency. Amar Rabbi Vo said, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So here the Gemara actually is going to bring here from Rabbi Vo, the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that we could learn from what he said, similar to the second version of what Rish Lakish here said. So he said as follows: Kol shetaimoi umamashoi aser like an olive. Anytime you have the taste and something of substance from the iser that fell into food that's mutter, so because you have both a taste and substance of it that's there, it's going to be asam and atayra, and you get malchus like an olive. And v'zeu, this is the halacha l'Moshe Misinai that was taught that if you eat a kezayis of an iser, bichdei achilas pras, within the time period that it takes to eat achilas pras, which means that if the food got mixed into something which is this size of achilas pras, so you're eating it within that time period. So even though you're not eating the kezayis of the iser itself, but you're eating the kezayis of the iser with a mixture, and it takes you a short period of time to eat, then it's considered to be one achila of a kezayis, which is also. That's the halacha l'Moshe Misinai, that the iser of eating any iser is in the amount of a kezayis, but it has to be in one time. Kedei achilas pras. Rashi here is a little bit ma'irich in explaining what kedei achilas pras means. So first of all, the translation of pras means a half a loaf of bread. In the times of the Gemara, the half a loaf of bread, that was the shear of one suda. You see, Rashi brings it from by Erev Chatzeris, or Erev Tchumen rather, by Erev Tchumen, and the source of this is also learned out from the pasuk by Negoyim, where there it says that if you remain inside long enough, as long as it takes to eat a meal, which is kedei achilas pras, then your clothing will become tummy as well. And this amount of the half a loaf of bread, there's actually a machlekes about this in the Gemara of Erevin, if it's 3 bayim or 4 bayim. Rashi paskins that it's the amount, the size of 4 eggs. So if you're eating this iser of kezayis that's mixed into a pras, which is 4 bayim, then it's going to be yasser. But more than that, it's considered like you ate the iser in 2 different days, two different times, and it's not going to combine to get malchus for this. Now, taimoi v'lei mamoshoi, if you have in this mixture only the taste of the iser that fell in, but you don't have the substance of the iser there itself, aser, so midrabanan it'll still be aser, but ve'ein like an olive. There's no malchus because it's not aser and atayre. Now, what's the case of taimoi v'lei mamoshoi? So Rashi says, not here actually, Rashi in Chulin says that the typical case would be if something that's aser falls into your pot of food, you took out that aser food, so the substance of it is out, but it still left a flavor in the food. So there's a tam of it. In such a case, because you took it out and only the flavor was left, it's going to be mutter. Here though Rashi says a different shot, and there's a big discussion in Taisus and the Rishonim. Rashi here says that the example of time of Elohim HaMoshe would be milk that got poured into a pot of food. Or, Rashi says, forbidden fats, chaylev, that melted into food. So from Rashi over here, it sounds like even if you didn't take it out, but because it got mixed in to the point where it's melted or it's not noticeable, it's not be'en, you don't see it, it's mixed into the ingredients, that's also called taimai v'lei mamoshe. That's a big chiddush. It's a big discussion about this in Rishayim and so on. Taisus over here points out that when Rashi says milk, it's a problem because it sounds like Rashi is talking about milk that fell into a pot of meat. Basa b'cholav. You're going to say that because you don't see the milk anymore, it's going to be mutter. That's the ism and atayra, basa b'cholav. It doesn't make a difference if you see it or not. So the Arachrenim that say, Rashi never says clearly basa. Rashi just says cholav, milk that fell inside. It means that it was cholav tameh. It was non-kosher milk that fell into a pot of other milk, and it gets mixed in, and you don't see it at all. According to Rashi, that is also called a case of taimai v'loi mamoshe. Okay, now the last point that Rabbi Yochanan said, V'im riba tam levgam mutter. And if he added a taste from this non-kosher of the aser item in this food, but it's a tam levgam, it gives a bad flavor, then it's going to be mutter. That was the lashon that Rabbi Yochanan said. Now, so the Gemara asks, V'leimer, Rabbi Yochanan should say, Im nasan tam levgam. If the iser gives a bad flavor, then it's mutter. What's this lashon that he says? Riba tam levgam. So the answer is, here we see the point that Eish Lakish said in the Iked Amri, the second version. Hakamash Malon, this is what he's saying, the Afagav, the Ikim Mili Achrenaisa, the Pagme Bahadei, that even if there's other things that already are causing the bad flavor together with this forbidden foods, it's causing the bad flavor. Nevertheless, it's called Neisim Tam Levgam, because you look at what kind of flavor the Isser is giving in the current condition of the food. If according to the condition now, it gives a bad flavor, it's not going to be Yosar. The Hilchas Kalishna Basra the Reish Lakish. And we're passing like this second version of what Reish Lakish said, that in this case it's still going to be Mutter. Amar Rav Kahana said, Medivrei Kulam Nilmat. From all these Amirayim that we mentioned here, we can learn. So we had Rav Yochanan, we had Reish Lakish, and all the Amiram here that are speaking about this Inyan, about the Neisim Tam Levgam, when it gives a bad flavor. So from all of them we could learn that Neisim Tam Levgam, an Isser that falls into a heter and it gives a bad flavor, mutter, that it'll be mutter. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye says, Bishloime Mikulu L'chaya. You're saying that we can see this from all the opinions of the Amiram here. Yes, that's true. But El de Reish Lakish, if you look into the words of Reish Lakish, not necessarily is he stating his own opinion, because Omru Ka'amar. Reish Lakish's expression was that that they said Neisim Tam Levgam Sha'omru. This idea of Neisim Tam Levgam that was said. He's not necessarily saying that this is his opinion. Now the Gemara said V'leilei Svirulei. So therefore, he himself doesn't necessarily hold of this opinion that if it gives a bad flavor, that it'll be mutter. So the Gemara Miklau. From this, I can understand. From what Rav Kahana said, I understand that there is an opinion that Neisim Tam Levgam aser, that even if it gives a bad flavor, it'll still be aser, because he's proving that all these Amirayim hold that it's mutter. So does that mean that there's others that hold that it's aser? Says the Gemara, yeah, that's actually true, because Vatanya, as you learned clearly in a Braisa, Echad Neisim Tam Levgam, whether it gives a bad flavor, whether it gives a good flavor, it's going to be aser divrei Rab Meir. That's Rab Meir's opinion. Rab Shimon says l'shvach, if it gives a good flavor, then aser. But l'vgam, if it gives a bad flavor, then mutter. That's going to be mutter. So this is the source of the machlokes Tanoim regarding this case. So the Gemara here now brings what is their sources from the psukim. My time at Rab Meir. What's Rab Meir's source? That Neisim Tam Levgam is also aser. Says the Gemara, Gamar migiulei oivdei kechavim. He learns it from what it says in the pasuk in the case where you have the vessels that come from Goyim, and they used it, they cooked in it, and it has what's absorbed in the walls. That's what giule means, what comes out from the absorption in the walls. And the source of this in the pasuk is in Parshas Matos, where it speaks about the Yidden that came from the war by Midian, and they brought back their kalim from Midian, and the pasuk there says, Kol davar sheyavu be'esh, that you have to purify it, which depends how it was used. Usually the rule is kebailai kach peltei, the way it absorbed, that's how you take it out. So over there, in that case, now, Giyulei of the Kechavim lav Neisim Tam Levgamu. In this case of the Giyulei of the Kechavim, isn't this a case where the flavor that comes out from the walls of these pots, isn't it a bad flavor? Because this is something that was already cooked in it from a day before. and overnight, whatever is left in it has a bad flavor. And the Torah says that it'll be aser. So from there we learn out regarding every iser lo yishna, that there's no difference if it gives a good flavor or a bad flavor. There's always going to be the iser. Now, ve'edach, Rab Shimon that disagrees with this will tell you, Rav Huna berei de Rav Chia. Rav Huna berei de Rav Chia said about this pasuk here, Rav Huna berei de Rav Chia, lo asra kedera Torah elo kedera bas yoma. The Torah is only asering if it's a pot that was used, that the guy used to cook with it on this day, the loyal of Gamo, and therefore the flavor did not go bad yet. That's when the Torah there by the Milchama of Midian says that they have to be metayir or they have to kasher the pots. That's because only the pots that was used on that day when it still has a good flavor. But Ve'edach, Rab Meir answers to this and says, even a kedera bas yoima, even a pot that was used on this day, nami I efsher de le pagma porta. It's impossible that the flavor that's left in the walls over a couple of hours, it's impossible that the flavor did not it wasn't nivgam, it didn't change, it has some negative flavor to it to some extent. It's not anymore a good flavor that's coming out of the walls either way, even if it's from the same day. And therefore, from the fact that you see over here that the Torah says it's aser even if the tam in the walls is pagum, porta, takanata, like overnight, but porta, that's enough of a source to say that any time there's a bad flavor from aser foods, even if it's overnight and it's completely a bad taste, but it's still going to be the same, and it's going to be aser. That's Rab Meir's source. Okay, but Rab Shimon, though, as you see here, Rab Shimon disagrees and says that the change of flavor that's in the walls of the pot from the day before to this day, even if the flavor already changes, but it's not the same. Can't compare. So you can't bring from here a source that if it has a bad taste, it's going to be mutter. Because the Torah could be speaking about the pots that were used today, and it doesn't have such a bad taste. There's a machlokes over here between Rashi and the other Rishonim regarding what's considered to be nois and tam levgam. Rashi here says as long as it's from the day before, even if it's not after 24 hours, as long as it's overnight, that's nois and tam levgam. Most Rishonim, other Rishonim, Tosfos says that it's only after 24 hours. That's when it's nice and tam of gam. Okay, let's finish the Indian here. But Rab Shimon, according to Rab Shimon, my timer, what is his source? That when there's a bad flavor, then the Isser does not apply. Because the Tanya, we learned in the Braisa, that loi seichalu kol nevela, do not eat any nevela. Is it the pasuk in this week's parsha? I think so. That do not eat from any nevela, lager asher b'sharecha, you should give the nevela, which is the meat that wasn't shechted, you give it to the ger, which refers to a ger taishav, that you're supposed to give it to him to eat. So now, what do we learn out from this? It says in the nevela, you don't eat it, but give it to the ger to eat. That means, kol hara'uya leger, only if it's food that has a flavor that you could eat, and the ger could eat it, kriya nevela. That's what's called nevela, that it'll be aser. But she'ein ra'uya leger, if it's not something that the ger could eat because it's spoiled, and it's a tam levgam, so then the isser is bottle, and a kriya nevela. Then the halacha of the Torah of nevela does not apply. But Rab Meir will answer to you, how does he learn and understand this pasuk here? He says, Hahu l'mu'ute srucha me'ekara. When the Torah here is saying that it has to be something which the ger would eat, and then the isser still applies, what does that exclude? A case where this behemoth, the meat of this behemoth from the beginning was never fit to eat. As Rashi here says, it's a behemoth that was a mukas shchin from when it was alive. It wasn't a quality of meat to eat from the first moment. There's where the Torah is saying that meat is not going to be aser. But Rab Shimon will answer and say, Srucha me'ikare lo tzricha miyuta. If it's meat that from the beginning was not fit to eat at all, that you don't need this meat over here of the Torah that compares the nevela only when the ger could eat it. You don't need any meat because afra ba'almahu. In this case, where you could never have eaten it, it's like earth. So if the Torah says lo'isaychlu, it's self-understood that it's something that was roi la'achila from the beginning. So therefore, there's an additional drasha of comparing nevela to the ger that is going to eat it, that it's dafka if it has a taste, and if it does not have a good taste, then the isser on it is going to be bottle.